Hello and good evening, everybody. Tonight what I want to do is I would like to start another episode of Face Off. And this is going to be the big one. Who are we going to look at tonight? Well, we're going to look at two heavy metal legends, both from Britain, and it is going to be the one and only Judas Priest versus the one and only Iron Maiden. Now, why am I comparing these two artists? Well, they both kind of took off at around the same time, the early 80s. They both were part of the new wave of British heavy metal movement. They both have the phenomenal dual guitar attack, and actually in Maiden's later years, they became a triple guitar attack, and they have very, very similar styles and are considered to be two of the greatest heavy metal bands ever. Now, the way this game works, tonight we have 18 rounds. It's going to be a bit. But basically, I'm going to compare both artists' first album and declare a winner, then compare both artists' second album and declare a winner, and go all the way to the end. And whoever has the most amount of rounds won is the winner. So we got a lot to tackle tonight, so let's go ahead and get started. We are going to kick this off with round one. Round one is going to feature Rocka Rolla by Judas Priest. And I apologize, I only have this on vinyl, and most people probably do not count this one, but I am going to. And it's going to be against the Soundhouse tapes by Iron Maiden. Now, I think we can all pretty much agree that on both of these albums, the artists had not really found their sound yet. I mean, let's just go ahead and look over here on Rocka Rolla. I mean, we got some great tracks on here, but even I can admit it is far from the best of Judas Priest. But I do like One for the Road. The title track is great. We have a nice little suite with Winter, Deep Freeze, Winter Retreat, and Cheater. But by far, the best track from Rocka Rolla is definitely Run of the Mill. I absolutely love Run of the Mill. It's got a very, very dark atmosphere to it, and it's absolutely amazing. They hadn't fully become a heavy metal band by this point. They were really more of a blues rock band, but it was good for what it was. The Soundhouse tapes, on the other hand, and let's look over here, and by the way, I am not going to be counting bonus tracks on any of these. A lot of these editions have bonus tracks. I am only comparing what was on the original release. And in terms of the Soundhouse tapes, it is only going to be the first 3 songs from side 1. And this is really a demo. This is really a demo tape. We have the title track Iron Maiden, which was later featured on their very first official album. We have Invasion, which never made it onto a single Iron Maiden album. And we have Prowler. The rest is not going to be counted. And, you know, great music. I love these 3 tracks. I really wish they had done an official version of Invasion. But Rocka Rolla is better, and I'm going to tell you why. It is at least an actual album. It is not a demo tape. So, therefore, I am going to give this first round to Judas Priest. So we have a scoreboard over here, and round 1 goes to Judas Priest. Now let's move to round 2, and we are going to have Sad Wings of Destiny by Judas Priest versus the debut album by Iron Maiden, simply entitled Iron Maiden. And I must say right now, both of these are a lot better than what came before it. And let's just look over here. We have classics, Judas Priest classics such as Victim of Changes, The Ripper, Tyrant, Genocide, all great songs that are still played today in concert, actually. They were still kind of had some bluesy influences on this one, and again, it's not really my style, but, you know, the songwriting was very, very strong on this one, and it's still a very strong album. Iron Maiden really kind of started off as more of a punk rock band or maybe a punk metal band. I don't know what you want to call it. But looking over here, we have Prowler, the official version of Prowler. We have Sanctuary, Remember Tomorrow, a much slower number, but still quite very memorable. We have Running Free, which is absolutely incredible. Phantom of the Opera. That has one of the best jam sessions ever, kind of in the middle, and it kind of segues into the end, and I really, really love Phantom of the Opera. The second side, or the second half, could be a little bit stronger, but Strange World is a pretty cool song, and as is the title track, the Iron Maiden, which is always played in concert, the song before the encore. This is a very, very tough call, but I am going to give this round to Iron Maiden. And my reason is I like the sound of the Iron Maiden record a lot better than Sad Wings of Destiny. Both have strong both have strong songwriting, but the sound on Iron Maiden is better, and it's got that extra punch that I was looking for on Sad Wings of Destiny. So we now have one round for Judas Priest and one round for Iron Maiden. Now we are going to move to round number 3. We have Sin After Sin by Judas Priest versus Killers by Iron Maiden. And I think Sin After Sin is better than the previous 2 Judas Priest releases. I really do. Let's just look over here. It kicks off with The Sinner. I love The Sinner. I think I mentioned this in my Judas Priest album rankings, but they did play that the second time I heard them in concert, and I loved it. We have a cover of Diamonds and Rust, The Star Breaker. Last Rose of Summer is more of a ballad, and those types of compositions did exist on the previous 2 albums, but Last Rose of Summer is, it's kind of catchy. Let Us Pray, Call for the Priest is a very aggressive number. Raw Deal, it's a little disposable, but I don't mind it. But then we have Here Come the Tears, which is a very haunting and brooding ballad. I love it. And of course it ends with the mighty Dissident Aggressor, which actually won a Grammy in the year 2010. A live version of it did, and that's pretty phenomenal. Killers fares pretty well also. I mean, I did review this on a previous episode of Album Rant, but I mean, Ides of March, great instrumental, The Rock Child, Murders in the Rue Morgue, Another Life, Prodigal Son, and Drifter are by far my favorite songs from here. But I gotta be honest, I think that Sin After Sin is a more consistently strong album than Killers, and so this round is going to go to Judas Priest. So, leaderboard right there. We have 2 rounds for Judas Priest and 1 round for Iron Maiden. Now we move to round number 3, and it's going to be 1978 Stained Class by Judas Priest versus 1982's The Number of the Beast by Iron Maiden. Wow, 2 of my favorite albums ever. This is going to be tough. I mean, let's just look at what we have to offer here. This one's kind of slanted. It's kind of annoying, but it's all right. But I love Exciter. I love White Heat Red Hot. I really love Better By You, Better Than Me, and the title track. Invader is probably one of the weaker ones on here, but just is still very good. But we have Saints in Hell, The Savage, and the big magnum opus on this one is Beyond the Realms of Death, which is absolutely phenomenal. And they did play that the very first time I saw them in concert, and I loved it. Starts out very, very soft, and I think I compared it to Sweet Madam Blue by Styx, and I still stand by that. But it just keeps picking up, and it's a dark, haunting number. I love it. Then, of course, it closes with Hero's End. Number of the Beast, on the other hand, we have some of the greatest Iron Maiden tracks ever, especially Children of the Damned, The Prisoner, which they are actually playing on their current tour, and I hope to see it in November. I'm very excited for it. The title track is one of the greatest Iron Maiden songs ever. So is Run to the Hills. But honestly, what really puts this album ahead of Stained Class is going to be the closer, Hallowed Be Thy Name. It is absolutely amazing. Again, starts out very slow, very haunting, but it keeps building and building, and the guitar work at the end is absolutely explosive. I have loved Hallowed Be Thy Name ever since I heard it. It is a concert staple. It is one of the best metal songs ever, and for that, I am going to give this round to Iron Maiden. Number of the Beast is sadly going to defeat Stained Class. The winner, Number of the Beast. So, we now have 2 rounds for Judas Priest and 2 rounds for Iron Maiden. But let's see how round number 5 does. We're going to go with Killing Machine by Judas Priest, and that is going to go up against Peace of Mind by Iron Maiden. And both of these albums start out very, very, very strong. I mean, on Killing Machine, we have Delivering the Goods. I mean, when it first starts out, it kind of sounds like Caribbean music to me. It's kind of weird. I may not have chosen the right term to describe that, but it's just the vibe that I get from it. But then it just starts getting very explosive, and it absolutely rocks. I did hear them perform that once in concert. Peace of Mind also starts out very well with Where Eagles Dare. I love Where Eagles Dare. It was actually the very first Iron Maiden song I ever legitimately heard, and I absolutely love it. The rhythm is great. The beat is great. The guitar work is great. Bruce is on his A game. Everyone is on their A game. So both of these albums start out with 2 of my favorite tracks ever. So, really, it depends on where we go from here. Well, Killing Machine pretty much maintains its speed. It pretty much maintains its steam, as I should say. Rock Forever is pretty good. Hell Bent for Leather is pretty good, and they always play that one in concert. I love Burning Up. I love the Green Manalishi with the 2-pronged crown. Same thing with the title track and Running Wild and Evil Fantasies. I wish I could say the same for Peace of Mind. Don't get me wrong, I love these songs, but compared to what kicked off this album, they're just not as well written. I mean, Flight of Icarus is pretty cool. Can't go wrong with The Trooper. I do love To Tame a Land, but Quest for Fire is pretty dumb, I gotta admit. There are some songs on here that I would consider quote-unquote filler. They sound great, but I don't think they're quite as well written as the first track, Where Eagles Dare. So I am going to give this round to Killing Machine. Judas Priest is going to win, and over here I am going to update the scoreboard, and we have Judas Priest 3 rounds, Iron Maiden 2. So now, let's take a look at what happened next. We have British Steel by Judas Priest versus Powerslave by Iron Maiden. Woo! Another very tough round to call. And once again, I am going to reiterate that I am only counting the original tracks. None of these bonus tracks are going to be considered. But this kicks off very well with Rapid Fire. Segues into Metal Gods. Boy, 2 very, very, very great tracks. We have Breaking the Law, which is considered to be one of the greatest Judas Priest songs ever. I gotta admit, I think the first 2 were better. I still love Breaking the Law, but I think I would prefer Rapid Fire and Metal Gods. Now, unfortunately, the next 2 songs I think are a little bit weak. I've never cared for Grinder or United. You don't have to be old to be wise. Despite the obvious dig that they're doing at parents, I still really like it. Living After Midnight, nice catchy song, and it was one of the very first Judas Priest songs I ever heard, and Fun story, sometimes in the car, when I was a freshman in high school, myself and my little brother and my mom would sometimes listen to my Judas Priest Greatest Hits album, and we loved Living After Midnight. The Rage starts out kind of bluesy, but it's alright. But Steeler is a pretty good closer. Very fast, very aggressive, and pretty good rhythm. On the other hand, we have Powerslave, and to be perfectly frank, Aces High took me a very long time to become obsessed with. I always loved it, but it was really after the last time I heard them in concert, which was in, October of 2022. They played it. It was their second encore. It was the very last song they played. And by that point, I was hooked on Aces High. Great metal song. As is 2 Minutes to Midnight. This is probably the most popular song off of Powerslave, but it's very, very strong. The middle could be a little bit better, but Lost for Words is a great instrumental. So is Flash of the Blade and The Duelist. Back in the Village is a tad obnoxious, but still a great song. But then we have the title track and the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. It is 13 minutes. It is based off the poem of the same name. It has got a great rhythm to it, and it's got a very, very haunting bass section in the middle. As I said, at the time, it was their longest song ever. It is a beast. I love the Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. This is such a tough call. Two very classic albums. But to be honest, if I had to pick between the two as to what I wanted to put on the record player, it's going to be Powerslave. Iron Maiden wins, and we are now tied up once again. Judas Priest 3, Iron Maiden 3. So let's go ahead and go to round number 7. We have Point of Entry by Judas Priest. And we have Somewhere in Time by Iron Maiden. And both of these are downgrades. Both of these are not nearly as good as what came before it. I mean, Point of Entry, I think I mentioned this in my Judas Priest album ranking video, but I think it's pretty flat. The songs aren't bad. Heading Out to the Highway, Desert Plains, Solar Angels are all pretty good songs, but again, the rest of it, I don't know what it is. The sound just never really resonated with me. I know there are people out there who like this one, and I totally respect that, but I never really cared for it. On the other hand, Somewhere in Time, the songwriting is not nearly as good as Powerslave. There are some pretty good tracks on here. I like the title track. I like Sea of Madness. Actually, I love Sea of Madness. Heaven Can Wait is pretty good. It's like 7 minutes or so. But Alexander the Great, it is now currently being played in concert for the very first time. I love it. And I can't wait to hear it. I hope they keep it in the set list. They're probably going to change it, but I hope they keep it in it. Now, the sound, they do have some guitar synths in here, and I don't really care for that. I really don't. We do not have the raw, aggressive sound as we had on the previous 5 albums by Iron Maiden. But still, I gotta say, the songwriting is better. Despite the more polished sound, it flows a lot better, the rhythm is better, and I still prefer the sound on Somewhere in Time. I am going to give this round to Iron Maiden. Somewhere in Time is going to defeat Point of Entry. So Iron Maiden is now in the lead. We have 4 rounds for Iron Maiden and 3 rounds for Judas Priest. So round number 8, we have Screaming for Vengeance versus Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. And both of these are pretty incredible. Seventh Son of a Seventh Son kind of continues the sound that Somewhere in Time introduced. But really, these are much better compositions than Somewhere in Time. Moonchild, great. Infinite Dreams, great. Can I Play with Madness? It's kind of silly, but it's catchy. The Evil That Men Do, the title track. The Prophecy is one of the weaker ones, but still pretty memorable. I love The Clairvoyant, and Only the Good Die Young closes out pretty decently. But I'm going to tell you right now, it is no match for Screaming for Vengeance. Screaming for Vengeance was my favorite Judas Priest album, and there is no way that it's going to lose to Seventh Son of a Seventh Son. We have the Hellion and Electric Eye, Riding on the Wind, the Bloodstone, Screaming for Vengeance. You've Got Another Thing Coming, and Devil's Child are all some of my favorite Judas Priest songs ever. This was the album that got me into Judas Priest. This is the album that got me hooked on them, and it further continued my path into becoming a metalhead. I love Screaming for Vengeance. They got their sound back. It does not sound flat like Point of Entry does. Screaming for Vengeance is going to win. The sound is better. The songwriting is better. It is just a stronger album. So Iron Maiden is out. Judas Priest is in. And we now have a tie once again. 4-4. So let's go ahead and keep going. We are going to go to the next round. We're going to have Defenders of the Faith by Judas Priest versus No Prayer for the Dying by Iron Maiden. And I think you'll recall I did speak very highly of Defenders of the Faith. Free Will Burning is fast. Free Will Burning is aggressive. Free Will Burning has a great rhythm to it. Free Will Burning is one of my favorite Judas Priest songs ever. I also love Rock Hard, Ride Free. Despite being a little bit slow, I can still really get into it. I love The Sentinel. This thing is dark and brooding, but it's also aggressive and doomy. I love The Sentinel. Love Bites is kind of silly. Eat Me Alive is also very silly, but it's fast and I like it. Then we have Some Heads Are Gonna Roll. When the Night Comes Down, a very haunting ballad. And then, of course, we have Heavy Duty and the title track, which close things out very, very, very nicely. Defenders of the Faith has always been a favorite of mine. I cannot say the same for No Prayer for the Dying. There may be people out there who like this one. I don't know what you see in it. This is the one where Adrian Smith left the band and was replaced by Yannick Gers, who is still with the band, which is pretty impressive. But the sound on this one, they were going for more of a raw sound, which harkens back to their early days, but they totally missed the mark on it. I don't know really how to describe it, but all I can say is it's not good. The songs aren't really that good either. Tail Gunner is alright. Holy Smoke is just too silly. No Prayer for the Dying, the title track, never really hooks me in. I can't describe it. It's just not good. The middle of the album is very forgettable. Hooks in You, still kind of silly, but I don't care for it. Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter was actually a song from Bruce Dickinson's solo career. They decided they liked it, so they recorded an Iron Maiden version of it. Good for you. And then we have Mother Russia, which is actually the best song on here, but I'm sure you figured this out by now. No Prayer for the Dying never had a prayer. Defenders of the Faith wins. Judas Priest wins. We now have 5 rounds for Judas Priest and 4 rounds for Iron Maiden. So let's press on. We have The Turbo by Judas Priest versus Fear of the Dark by Iron Maiden. And you guys probably know this about me by this point in your life, but I do not like Turbo. I have never liked Turbo. This came out the same year as Somewhere in Time, and by this point, bands wanted hit music video compositions that could go on MTV. And so they all adopted their sound to fit those parameters. These songs are very, very stupid. I have never liked Turbo Lover or Locked In or Private Property or Parental Guidance or Rock You All Around the World. Never. Out in the Cold, I will admit, is a pretty decent song. The production on this is awful. The production sounds like synth pop. I do not like synth pop. So on the album, Out in the Cold does not sound very good. On their live album, it sounds a lot better. I could talk about the rest, but I really don't have much to say. On the same side of the coin over here, we have Fear of the Dark, which is far from a great Iron Maiden album. The sound is still lacking the raw, aggressive energy of its predecessors, particularly those early 80s albums, which were absolutely phenomenal. And as you can probably tell, there is a ton of filler on here. Be Quick or Be Dead is it's alright. I do actually like From Here to Eternity. It's got a great rhythm, it's got some nice bass work in it, I do like it. Afraid to Shoot Strangers is very underrated. It's about war, which is what a lot of these songs were about. Iron Maiden wrote about war a lot. And it's all about how the soldiers down on the front lines didn't start the war. A lot of them don't even want to be there. And they're being asked to kill people that they don't even know. And it puts them in a moral dilemma, and that's why they're afraid to shoot strangers. I actually have always liked Afraid to Shoot Strangers. I think it's got a very, very interesting structure to it. Starts out very, very slow, and it's got a nice beat. I probably did that wrong, but whatever. But then when things finally start kicking in, it sounds pretty phenomenal. Okay? There is actually a live version that was recorded when Bruce Dickinson, the lead singer, was no longer in the band, and it sounds pretty awesome. The next couple of songs are very, very forgettable. I have heard this album many, many times, and a lot of these songs never really stuck with me. But guys, the title track, it's great. It is a concert classic. They always play this one. It's usually before the Iron Maiden track, before they go into the encore. It's great. Every time they played it, the times I've heard them in concert, I was bouncing up and down, banging my head, singing along. It's awesome. And that is more than I can say for Turbo. And I'm sure this is no surprise to anyone, but Fear of the Dark has defeated Turbo. So we are now at another tie. We have 5 rounds for Judas Priest and 5 rounds for Iron Maiden. So now we move to round number 11. We have Ram It Down by Judas Priest, and we have The X Factor by Iron Maiden. And neither of these albums are very well regarded in today's day and age. I mean, over here, we have the title track, pretty fast, love it. We have Heavy Metal, which I do not know how any legitimate heavy metal fan cannot like this song. That guitar solo at the very beginning is killer. Then when Rob Halford's vocals start going in, you know you are in for a wild ride, and I love heavy metal. Love Zone does kind of contain some leftover elements from Turbo. I admit that. But Come and Get It is alright. And we have Hard as Iron. Laying it on pretty thick there, aren't you, Rob? But Blood Red Skies is a great song. It does have some synthesizers in it. I admit that. But it's got a nice, triumphant, victorious feel to it. And I just can't get enough of it. They did play that once in concert the last time I saw them, and I went ballistic. I'm a Rocker is okay. Johnny Be Good probably never should have been on here, but Love It to Death, nothing wrong with it, and it concludes very well with Monsters of Rock. Now, a lot of people say this is a pop rock album just like Turbo. It's not. They still, yes, had some synthesizers, but it was still a heavy metal album. And it's always been one of my favorites ever since high school. The X Factor, on the other hand, it kind of struggles. Bruce Dickinson was out of the band by this point. He left to pursue a solo career, actually, I guess, focused more on his solo career. Correct me if I'm wrong. But he was replaced by a vocalist by the name of Blaze Bayley, who I am sure is a very nice guy, but his style of vocals was vastly different from Bruce's. He had a much lower voice, and from what I understand, the band actually forced him to sing songs in concert that they knew were out of his vocal range, which resulted in a lot of throat problems that he developed. But this album is dark, and sadly not in a good way. It's very, very murky, and the songwriting just is not there, which is a real shame because this could have been something good. But Sign of the Cross is one of my favorites. I love Sign of the Cross. 11 minutes, starts out very slow, very murky, but then it just picks in, and it actually does hook me. Lord of the Flies, I've never cared for. Man on the Edge is probably the most well-known song on here, and it's pretty catchy, I'll admit that, but not enough to really hook me. Fortunes of War, I don't mind. Look for the Truth, I don't mind, but the Aftermath, Judgment of Heaven, Blood on the World's Hands, kind of forgettable. The Edge of Darkness is probably the worst Iron Maiden song out there. It is really what it seems to be, just quotes from the movie Apocalypse Now, and it's not working. I mean, Blaze is kind of going, and for my sins they brought me a mission! They brought it up to me just like room service, because every man always get what he wants. They were going to plunge me straight into Kurtz. Terminate with extreme prejudice. I know I said that wrong. I don't care. It sounds terrible. 2 a.m. and The Unbeliever are also pretty forgettable. So, again, I'm sure it's pretty obvious by this point. Ram It Down is going to defeat the X Factor. I love Ram It Down. Not my favorite, but I think that a lot of people give it a lot of flack that it doesn't deserve. Judas Priest now has 6, and Iron Maiden has 5. So, moving on to round 12, we have the Painkiller versus Virtual 11. Painkiller is considered to be the album where they officially ditched all of the turbo influences. Not a lot of keyboards on this one, and they had a nice, fast, slick production on it, and it worked incredibly well. I love every song on Painkiller, especially the title track. They make a big deal about this one whenever they play it in concert. What am I looking at anyways? There we go. I love the Painkiller, especially after the interlude and they come back and they start singing the chorus and the verse again. It's amazing. So is Hell Patrol. So is All Guns Blazing and Leather Rebel. Metal Meltdown is fantastic. It starts out with a very explosive guitar solo, just like the heavy metal song from Ram It Down, and it's incredible. It's fast. The second side could be a little bit better. Nightcrawler's alright. I don't care too much for Between the Hammer and the Anvil, but I do love A Touch of Evil and One Shot at Glory. Virtual 11, while I do like it better than the X Factor, it still has some problems. The production is a little bit flat, and the songs aren't particularly well written. I do like Future Real, though. The Angel and the Gambler could have been very good if they just about chopped it in half or so, because I swear, 4 minutes of that is definitely Blaze just singing the exact same chorus over and over and over and over again. Don't you think I'm a savior? Don't you think I'm a savior? Don't you think I can save your life? Or something like that. I think he says that like 27 times or something. That's about 26 times too many. The Klansman is good. I do like the Klansman. And the version live in concert with Bruce on lead vocals is even better. But it is nowhere near enough to defeat Painkiller. Painkiller mops the floor with Virtual 11. So we now have 7 rounds for Judas Priest and 5 rounds for Iron Maiden. So let's see what is going to come next. And this is going to be a very interesting development. I just talked about 2 Iron Maiden albums where the lead vocalist had been swapped out for someone who was not very well received by fans and only lasted for 2 albums. Now, Judas Priest is going to swap out their lead vocalist for someone who was not fully received well by fans and only lasted for 2 albums. We have Jugulator by Judas Priest. Rob Halford is out. Tim the Ripper Owens is in. And that is going to go up against Brave New World by Iron Maiden, which sees the ejection of Blaze Bayley and the return of both Bruce Dickinson and lead guitarist Adrian Smith. Now Iron Maiden has 3 guitarists. Wow. Now, I wrote off Jugulator a long time ago. I knew about it ever since high school, but I did not actually give it a good, legitimate listen until just recently. And it's not bad, okay? I do like Jugulator, the title track. Bloodstain is pretty good. I do like Burn in Hell. I love Cathedral Spires. That is an epic, by the way. I think anyone who has not listened to this album, if they're just going to listen to anything, make it Cathedral Spires. It's a great track. It's about 9 minutes or so, but it goes very well. Brave New World, on the other hand, was really a return to form. With Bruce and Adrian back, we had some much better songwriting. I love The Wicker Man. I love Ghost of the Navigator, the title track, Blood Brothers. I love Blood Brothers as well. I've heard them play that twice in concert, and it's pretty incredible. The Mercenary is pretty fast. Dream of Mirrors is severely underrated. I've actually loved that one ever since I first heard it. They only played it one time in concert, and I think they should give it another go-around. Apparently, Blaze Bayley actually has a writing credit on this, but he was removed from the actual legitimate credits for some reason. I don't know. I guess they figured he's out of the band, so take his name off the song. Kind of a jerk move, but whatever. But I do love Dream of Mirrors, okay? It starts out, again, very soft and very melodic, and it just keeps building and building, and it does it well. I have really come to appreciate the Nomad. I love the Nomad. And then the thin line between love and hate is a very good closer. The sound on Brave New World is so much better than Virtual 11 and the X Factor. And it's also a lot better than Jugulator. And the songwriting is a lot better than Jugulator. Iron Maiden is going to win this one. As much as I do appreciate Jugulator for what it is, it never stood a chance against Brave New World. Iron Maiden is now up to 6, and Judas Priest has 7. So next round, we're now up to round 14. Well, we've come a long way. We're going to have 2001's Demolition by Judas Priest versus 2003's Dance of Death by Iron Maiden. And I gotta be honest, I don't think either of these are as good as what came before it, but there still is a lot to enjoy from both of them. Demolition was still kind of riding the whole nu metal thing that was very popular around the time, and there is a live album out there that has a lot of these songs performed on it. It's called Live in London. It was the last live album released with Ripper Owens on lead vocals, and I think you should check it out. It is a pretty legitimately good live album. But those versions sound a lot better than the ones on the studio release, but I'm only counting the studio release. But I don't mind Machine Man. I do like One-on-One. Hell is Home, I feel like I should like it, but I don't fully, okay? Jekyll and Hyde is alright. I do like Feed on Me, and I do like Metal Messiah, so I can say that. Dance of Death still has some pretty good numbers on here. Rainmaker is alright. No More Lies is good. It's 7 minutes, and it was the one song written exclusively by Steve Harris, and it flows incredibly well. The title track took me a long time to warm up to it, but I love it. It's another one that starts very soft and builds, and you've heard the story. Passchendaele, it's great. I love Passchendaele. It's, again, about war, but it's good, okay? It's probably the best song on here, and for good reason. And so for all that, songwriting is stronger, the sound is stronger. Dance of Death has defeated Demolition. So that is another round for Iron Maiden. So we now have 7-7. Okay, so we are now in round 15, I believe. Yes, 15. We have the album where Judas Priest rejoined with Rob Halford. We have Angel of Retribution versus 2006's A Matter of Life and Death by Iron Maiden. And I gotta be honest, I do not like Angel of Retribution the way I should. This was the big epic return of Rob Halford. Should have been the greatest thing ever, but it just wasn't. But it's not without its merits, okay? Judas Rising, pretty good kickoff. Deal with the Devil is not bad. Revolution still has kind of some of those new metal influences. Not digging it. I don't mind Worth Fighting For. Wheels of Fire, pretty decent. Hell Rider, not bad. Loch Ness, it's a 13-minute track. As ridiculous as it is, I do kind of like it. Now, A Matter of Life and Death, this is the album that on the tour, they played the entire album in its entirety. And they were met with mixed results. I don't think a lot of the fans really wanted that. And I could totally see that. What they did is they played the entire A Matter of Life and Death album. Then they played 5 more songs. Fear of the Dark, Iron Maiden, 2 Minutes to Midnight, The Evil That Men Do, and Hallowed Be Thy Name. I'd have been pretty disappointed if I went to that concert and didn't know what they were doing beforehand. Different World is a pretty weak track. I don't like it. These Colors Don't Run is a song I really tried to like. I couldn't, though. I do like Brighter Than a Thousand Suns. I do like The Longest Day. I do like Out of the Shadows. The Reincarnation of Benjamin Brieg, I guess, isn't bad. For the Greater Good of God, not quite my favorite. It sounds a lot like the X Factor. Sounds like leftovers from the X Factor. And it's got that very dark and murky atmosphere to it. And to be honest, it's just not as good as the previous two. I'm just going to be honest there. This was a very tough call for me, but I am going to give it to Angel of Retribution. If I had to pick one or the other to listen to, I probably would go with Angel of Retribution, but neither of these are really my favorites. Neither of them are really what I think of when I think of Judas Priest and Iron Maiden. They're not bad. They're far from bad, but they're also not excellent. But I would rather listen to Angel of Retribution. So that's going to be another round for Judas Priest. Okay, we now have 3 rounds left. This is going to be close. We come to 2008's Nostradamus by Judas Priest versus 2010's The Final Frontier by Iron Maiden. Which I kind of feel is false advertising. I mean, you kind of would think that's going to be their final album, considering it's called The Final Frontier. But nope, it's not. Maybe I'm reading way too much into this, but yeah, there's that at least. But anyways, Nostradamus is pretty disappointing. I discussed this extensively in my album ranking video, but this is prog rock. This is way too ambitious. It's a concept album. I have loved many concept albums throughout my life, but this would not be one of them. Some of these songs are so far removed from what you would think of when you think of Judas Priest. Most of these songs are just very melodic ballads where I'm going to do my best here, but he's pretty much going, Nostradamus, Nostradamus, Nostradamus. I know he doesn't actually do that, but that's kind of what it sounds like. But it's pretty disappointing. Prophecy is good. Death is good. The title track is good. Future of Mankind is good. I don't really have many positive things to say about anything else on here. The Final Frontier, on the other hand, I have always loved. This is an album that I thought was a lot better than A Matter of Life and Death. I mean, it kicks off with Satellite 15 and the title track. It's a great opener, okay? Again, it's broken up into two parts, but essentially, Satellite 15 is your more dark and moody opener, while the title track kicks things up and is a little bit more upbeat and everything, but it's 8.5 minutes, and I love every single second of it. I do like El Dorado, except for the chorus, but El Dorado is pretty strong. Mother Mercy, I've loved that one from the beginning. They have never played that one in concert, and I kind of think they should, because I do think it's better than Coming Home. But I do like The Alchemist and Isle of Avalon. But what really is going to set this album apart from all the other ones is the closer, When the Wild Wind Blows, and it runs about 11 minutes. This thing has such an emotional impact in it. It starts out very murky and very sad in a way. It's mostly just the bass in the beginning, but Bruce is really setting the stage. It's about a couple who live in constant fear that there's going to be a nuclear holocaust. And they hear on the TV that something bad is happening. They feel the ground shake. They start to feel tremors. And they think the nuclear bomb has dropped. They go down to their shelter, and they do not want to die the horrible, horrible death of radiation poisoning. He doesn't want to look into the mirror and see an old man now. He doesn't want to look through the garden looking at the meadows, wondering if they'll ever grow again. So they both commit suicide together by taking poison. The very end, we have a nice little coda at the end. It's only about 30 seconds, but it goes back to that very melodic intro, and it's revealed on the TV that all along it was just an earthquake. When they found them, had their arms wrapped around each other, their tins of poison lying nearby their clothes. The day they both mistook an earthquake for the fallout, just another When the Wild Wind Blows. Very, very tragic. It's one of my favorite Iron Maiden songs ever, and I really wish they would bring this one back in concert. I would totally get into it. This is definitely prog metal. It has all of these different sections. They sound different, but they all hit the mark, and they all flow very well together. And it was never any contest. I was always going to give this one to The Final Frontier. The Final Frontier has defeated Nostradamus, and we now have a tie. And this is really going to start heating up. Now, Nostradamus was one big disappointment. So, what happened in 2014, KK Downing, longtime guitarist, actually left the band. I think he wasn't getting along with the other members or something. I don't know the drama. But we have Redeemer of Souls versus the fifth album with Iron Maiden as a six-piece band, The Book of Souls. And Redeemer of Souls is a lot more stripped down and back to basics. And I did praise this one in my album ranking video, but just go through this again. Dragonaut, great. Title track, great. Halls of Valhalla, great. March of the Damned, I love Down in Flames. I love Metalizer. I love Battle Cry. And the beginning of the end is a nice little ballad. I wouldn't call it a ballad, but it's very soft. And it closes things very, very nicely. I really felt they had returned to more of a painkiller type style on this one, and it works incredibly, incredibly well. And I do love Redeemer of Souls. Book of Souls, on the other hand, does have its highlights. If Eternity Should Fail is a great opener. Speed of Light is really more of a pretty basic, simplistic song. Still pretty good. The Great Unknown has a great bass intro, but really the best song on here by far is The Red and the Black. This thing sounds a lot like the Rime of the Ancient Mariner, which I love. The rhythm is great. The songwriting is great. Everyone is on their A game here. This is the one song that was written exclusively by Steve Harris. I love The Red and the Black. The Book of Souls isn't bad. Death or Glory is okay. Empire of the Clouds is 18 minutes. Apparently it's about the Hindenburg disaster. It was written solely by Bruce Dickinson, and it's pretty ridiculous. I don't think it needed to be 18 minutes at all. Overall, I think Book of Souls was a little too ambitious. I really do, and it probably could have been, it definitely should have been edited down to a single disc edition. This is a double disc edition. The entire thing runs 92 minutes, which is way too long, and I don't think the songwriting really justifies the length. Tough call, very, very tough call, but I'm going to give a slight edge to Redeemer of Souls. The Book of Souls has the red and the black. I love it. Some of the other songs are decent, but there is way too much filler on it, and a lot of these songs probably could have been cut altogether or cut for time, and I think Redeemer of Souls is a little bit more consistent. So we now have 4 rounds for Judas Priest. No, what am I saying? 9 rounds for Judas Priest and 8 rounds for Iron Maiden. So it all comes down to this. We could potentially have a tie. We have the most recent album, Firepower, by Judas Priest, versus the most recent album, Senjutsu, by Iron Maiden. And I like both of them. I really do. Firepower pretty much continues the same direction that Redeemer of Souls did, but it sounds a lot better, and the songs flow together so much better than they did on Redeemer of Souls. Title track, great. Lightning Strike, great. Evil Never Dies, great. Love Never the Heroes. Necromancer is good. Rising from Ruins, love it. Traitor's Gate, No Surrender, Sea of Red. Very, very solid album. Is it too long? Maybe. Probably could have taken it down to about 10 songs or so, but I don't hate any of these songs. I think some are better than others, but I think overall this is a very, very strong album. It's just got a much better flow and better sound to it than what came before it. And this is definitely my favorite Judas Priest album ever since Rob Halford rejoined the band. Senjutsu is also really, really good. It is another... Oh, where can I find the track list? Ooh. Well, this is embarrassing. Got to go to the insert. There we go. This is another double album. It's not as long as Book of Souls, but it still cracks the 80-minute mark. It's like 83 minutes or so. And again, it probably did not need to be a double album. But the title track kicks things off, and it kicks it off pretty well. I mean, you get the feeling once again the band is about to go galloping off into battle once again, and it's a good opener. I've heard people diss it, but I think it's pretty good. I think it's nice. I think it's very epic. I think it's got a nice, victorious, triumphant feel to it. I love it. The last time I saw them, it was the Legacy of the Beast tour, and they did incorporate some of the songs from Senjutsu into the set list. because they had already released the album, and they thought, you know, why not? And they kicked it off with Senjutsu, and I was into it. Stratego is pretty stripped down, pretty straightforward. A lot like Speed of Light and a lot of the other main hit singles from a lot of these recent albums. It's pretty decent. The Writing on the Wall was the first single released from Senjutsu, and I think it starts out pretty well. It's got a nice little Western feel to it, but the chorus just doesn't really do it for me. I was really trying to get into it the time they played it when I saw them. The last time I saw them, they played the first 3 songs from here. They played Senjutsu, Stratego, and The Writing on the Wall. And I was trying very hard to get into The Writing on the Wall, but it just wasn't working. Lost in a Lost World and Days of Future Past haven't really not quite my cup of tea. I just don't think they're very strong songs, but The Time Machine I do like. I do really like The Time Machine. It's about 7 minutes or so. They are currently playing it on the Future Past tour, and I do hope to hear that one when I'm able to see that tour in November. I'm really excited for that. Time Machine, great number. Disc 2 is kind of hit and miss. I'm not a huge fan of Darkest Hour, but I do really love Death of the Celts. It's got another very, very good epic feel to it, and again, it feels a lot like the title track. It feels a lot like classic Iron Maiden. Like it's about some kind of epic quest or something. I don't actually know what it's about, but Death of the Celts is a definite highlight from Senjutsu. The Parchment is okay, but Hell on Earth is my favorite song from Senjutsu. This is currently kicking off the encore on their tour, and it's amazing. Again, starts out very slow. This thing is like 11 minutes, by the way. Starts out very slow, but then it starts building, and gosh, that outro, the very end of it just really hits you in such an emotional punch. I love it. Now, I just got to look at the big picture. I got to see who exactly delivered a stronger album in this round. And again, I've got to go to consistency. Between both of these albums, my favorite song is probably Hell on Earth. But the weakest song from both these albums is also probably off of Senjutsu. Firepower is more consistent. Firepower is more basic and straightforward. Senjutsu was still a little bit more ambitious than it should have been. Very tough decision. I could swing the other way on any other night, but I'm going Firepower. So that concludes it. We have 10 rounds for Judas Priest, and we have 8 rounds for Iron Maiden. Very, very close call. 2 of my favorite artists ever. But on today, the winner is going to be Judas Priest. And for now, I am going to stand by that. I may change my mind later, and if I do, I will try to correct myself in another video. But I can say this. In my initial episode of Face Off, there was a round that I was really on the fence on. I was starting to question it. But I re-listened to both of the albums, and I decided that I need to stand by what I said, because I think going with my gut is the most reliable pathway to truth. So anyways, thank you very much for joining me tonight on this episode of Face Off. I had a very fun time talking about these 2 artists, and I will do another Face Off episode at some point. But for now, for next week, I'm going to return to Album Rant, and I'm going to do what should be done by taking a good look at yourself. But until then, have a very pleasant evening.